Hey folks, it's John from AIFA Alcoholic again. Today's conversation is with Khadi Olagoke. She is the founder of Sober Black Girls Club, a website dedicated to helping Black women find other Black women to get sober with. It's a great resource for anybody, and it was great to talk to her. We had a good conversation. We talked about the importance of doing the work, of finding yourself, of reaching out for help, of finding somebody you can relate to. And I think that was the biggest thing that I took away, was how important it is to find somebody that you can relate to and that you can connect with, and why it's important to have many voices in this conversation about sobriety and recovery so that we can all help each other find our way through this sometimes seemingly impossible mess. So, without further ado, here is my conversation with Khadi Olagoke. When did you find yourself drinking alcoholically, or was there somebody in your life, an adult, when you were a child that that you were around that started drinking?
No, I grew up like in a really I'm African Muslim. So my family just didn't drink. I didn't start drinking until I went to college. So that was like 18, 19. I went to college, I started drinking, and
Folks, it's
at
John
that
from
time it was
AIFA Alcoholic
socially,
again.
well, to be
Today's
honest, when I think
conversation is
about
with
my
Khadi
college and like
Olagoke.
law school
She is the
drinking,
founder
like
of Sober Black Girls Club,
we were
a website
drinking in ways that we
dedicated
shouldn't
to
have been
helping
drinking.
Black
Like it
women
was crazy.
find other
It was
Black
nuts.
women to get
But
sober with.
it looked
It's a great
okay
resource
because
for
everyone was
anybody,
drinking. That's what you do
and
when you go
it
to
was
school, you
great to
drink.
talk to her.
And
We
it
had a
wasn't
good
until
conversation. We
2017
talked
that I
about the
remember I was
importance
moving back to
of
New York City.
doing the
That's where I'm
work,
from, Staten
of
Island.
finding
So moving
yourself,
back to
of
Staten
reaching
Island,
out
I
for
had just
help,
taken the bar.
of finding somebody you
I
can relate
was
to. And I
going
think
to
that
start a
was the
new job. I was
biggest
starting.
thing
A
that
lot
I
of things
took
were
away,
changing really
was how
fast,
important
and
it
it
is
basically,
to find
I basically
somebody that
became
you can relate
depressed.
to and that you can
Me and my
connect
ex
with,
for like
and why
five,
it's
6 years, we
important to
had
have
broken up.
many
So I was like living in this
voices in
apartment
this conversation
alone. Like
about sobriety
it was
and
just new
recovery
and it was
so that we
scary, I
can
guess.
all help each other
And
find
at
our
that
way through
time, I
this
didn't really
sometimes
understand.
seemingly impossible
Now
mess.
looking back, I
So,
can say like
without
I
further
just wasn't
ado,
comfortable
here is
being
my
alone. I wasn't
conversation
comfortable with
with
myself. I
Khadi
didn't like myself at that
Olagoke.
time. But I didn't know that, like you go through life, you like get your degrees, you have your car, and you think that that's what life is until you have all those things and you're still unhappy and you're like, what the, what the hell? So at that time, 2017 to 2018, I just started drinking heavily, to the fact that like I lost my job. I lost multiple jobs. Um, I couldn't afford to keep my apartment. I lost my car. I had to move back in my parents to my parents' house with my parents. So yeah, my life was just really falling apart. I wasn't going to work. Nothing was just working out, and it was just that year of depression for me that led to me drinking more and heavily, which then turned into a problem, which then turned into a full blown addiction.
Yeah. Was it so it was mostly social at first, as it is for a lot of people, or was it more I'm trying to avoid things that are making me, you say you fell into depression. Was it directly related to that, or was there social drinking that slid into that being in school?
It was at first it was definitely social drinking, but
Mm-hmm.
I don't even like to really use the word social because there was nothing social about the way I drank in college and law school. Like looking back, it's bad. It was bad. My drinking habits were awful, but because it's school, no one cares. Like it's just
Right.
whatever. Like we're gonna go party. So yeah, I was drinking around others at that time. So I guess that's the social aspect. But it was my drinking habits in law school was awful. But I will say that once 2017 hit, I guess I was just really depressed. I've always had the
Mm-hmm.
A type personality, so I was like a part of sororities and clubs, and like every year I was getting scholarships, awards, blah 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 blah. And then when it was 2017, where I had to just live this life where I wasn't getting I guess like compliments every day. I wasn't like the center of people's attention anymore. It kind of I wasn't expecting that. And yeah, you know, I could have joined other clubs and, you know, made new friends and been a part of this and been a part of that, but that's just not where my mind was at. And that's where
Mm-hmm.
what I was talking about before of like, I didn't realize how much I didn't like myself. I wasn't okay with just being alone and being quiet, like having like stillness. I wasn't used to that. I was always used to like chaos. And I don't use chaos in a bad way, but just drama. And I don't, drama not in necessarily a bad way. I was just used to things happening and revolving around me and like my life being like 1, 2, 3. And I just wasn't used to like this slow pace, like, oh wow, I'm an adult. Like really? Like I just have a 9 to 5 job, come home, blah blah blah. And I just got depressed and just started drinking at that time, alone. And then it just manifested into a problem and an addiction.
Yeah, there's this when I hear you talk about wanting not necessarily chaos or drama, but there's this feeling I know when I was drinking very heavily of always wanting there to be some sort of action or distraction or something going on and looking for that sort of exciting thrill, or and even if that exciting thrill was just what, sitting on a bar stool maybe, like that was enough for me to forget about or ignore other things going on in my head and in my heart and in my life. And I think that's a very common thing with a lot of people who deal with addiction, is this sort of, I don't want to deal with it, so I'm just going to go and find this thing that's supposedly fun, you know. And I think that there was some fun, but it was always had that underlying
Yeah.
that feeling, like you say, of depression or frustration or not wanting to be still. Like that's something that is so absolutely true with me for sure. Um, was there a moment where you was there a moment or something that happened where you were like, okay, I'm done, or was it just, did you just wake up one day and say, I've got to stop this?
I was at like my second legal job. Mind you, I'm a new lawyer. Like I should have
Mm-hmm.
jobs. Like I, you know, so I was already fired from my previous legal job. I was at this, I was at a firm in Brooklyn, and they had like a party the day before. I don't know, I wasn't there. I probably called out because I was drinking or something. And the next day I go to work and there's like bottles of alcohol, and I'm like, and I just went to the bathroom and drank, and I cursed out my boss, and got fired, got sent home, and I was like, you know what, I'm just so tired of this, like this life, like I like the thing is that when I used to drink, I when I drink when I used to drink when I was drinking, I wasn't always like the nicest. You know, I was kind of rude, selfish, blah blah blah. When I was under the influence, um, wait, why did I bring that? I just lost my train of thought. So yeah, I lost my train of thought. But going
But
back to the question, yes, that's the incident. That's the day that I decided that I just couldn't live like this anymore. But I was
mm-hmm.
going with, but yeah, when I am under the influence, I'm not the nicest person. I'm really mean,
Right.
really rude. So okay, yeah. So then I just had to basically accept that, like, yeah, I do like drinking. Yes, drinking can be fun, but every time I drank, something bad always happened. It's so I had to like I just had to accept that I had to stop. Like there was no moderation for me. There was no like reduce harm. Like that's not, it wasn't a thing. Like I would try to not drink, or drink a little, and I might, you know, do well for a week, and then when things started going good again, I would go back into bad old habits. So I just had to accept that, like, yeah, alcohol
Right.
is fun, but it's just not. It's not giving me the life that I want for myself.
Yeah, no, and I totally get that sort of, oh, I'll just quit for a little while, and then when that like 3 day hangover goes away, and then you feel a little bit better, and you're like, oh, everything's fine again, and then it just,
Yeah.
um, can I ask you, growing up in a no alcohol as a child in your family and an environment, um, do you think, how does that play into then being somewhere where it's readily available? Was it instilled in you not to drink, or was it just not around? Was it something that was taught,
It
or
wasn't, and that's actually a really good question. It wasn't instilled in me not to. I mean, kids know not to drink. Like, I guess in
Mm-hmm.
school, but like in family, like no, it wasn't something that we discussed. But it's just
Hmm.
something that we just didn't do.
Right.
Didn't drink. But that's actually a really good point. Like raising kids and actually teaching them about like the dangers of alcohol and other stuff too, because we never talk about it. I mean, you go to school, they talk about it in school, kinda. I guess I don't remember even them talking about alcohol in school.
Mm-mm.
But it was just something that Muslims, don't drink, don't smoke, don't blah blah blah, whatever. Don't have sex before marriage, like all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of those things that we knew not to do.
Right. Yeah, I always find it so funny now, being 5 years sober, that I look back on it and there was no instruction about it. And I always hate to be, I don't ever want to be somebody who's like this teetotaler and like, hey, you can't drink. Like a lot of people can, and that's great and that's fine. But there really is this underlying, especially in America, um, in this culture of destructive drinking that we don't think about and we don't talk about, and it's almost encouraged as a fun thing to do. And it's just like you said, just what you do in college. Like, hey, it's college, it's no big deal. And not everybody is able to leave it when college is over. And I think that like it gets their hooks in them. And so I'm always curious, like when somebody grows up, because my dad was an alcoholic, and so not having it, it doesn't, I guess it doesn't necessarily matter. Once you get a taste of it, you are then you're hooked if you're an alcoholic. I mean, and how do you feel about that word? Do you consider yourself an alcoholic, or how do you define it for yourself? I mean, it's different for everybody, right? So I don't want to put a label on you.
Yeah, I don't call myself an alcoholic just because I'm not. I was.
Okay.
So I okay. So just to backtrack a little bit,
Yeah.
like alcohol is so ingrained in our culture. It's like even the other day, I honestly sat down and was watching Netflix, and I like made a tally of every time alcohol was like in a show I was watching or was mentioned, and it's constantly being shown. I didn't even realize that. Like
Yeah.
like everything that they did in whatever show movie I was watching, like they had alcohol in the scene, or they were talking about getting a drink or going to a bar. Like America shoves alcohol down on us, and I feel like we really need to like change that. I don't know what needs to be done, but like that just was just really disturbing. And go back to like the word alcoholic. No, I don't consider myself an alcoholic because that's what I was. I think that like anyone can become addicted. If you do something long enough, you can become addicted to it, especially if you have an addicting personality. Which is why I really am scared for a lot of people who are drinking in quarantine. Like you're not gonna know you have a problem until you try to stop, and then you can't stop. And it's gonna be harder for you to stop
Yeah.
if you're doing something more often. Like if you're constantly drinking, it just makes sense that it would be harder for anyone who has spent days, months drinking to then stop drinking, because drinking makes people feel good, for that time, for that moment. So I don't consider myself an alcoholic. I admit that I was an alcoholic in the past. I can say
Mm-hmm.
drinking problem or I've used alcohol, but I think it's important for people to know that anyone can abuse alcohol. Anyone can abuse anything. Anyone can become an alcoholic.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that I have a special gene in me, or like I'm just like,
Sure.
like you said, growing up, alcohol was not in my family. And sometimes, and I guess like uh, when I was dealing with my addiction, I kept on thinking like, how did this happen to me? And again, because I was really in that AA mentality, which I love AA. I don't have anything wrong. I don't think there's just anything wrong with AA. However, it was easier for me to understand that anyone can become an alcoholic if they drink too much, if they have if they have certain characteristics, if they have certain habits or certain practices. And I just had to accept, like me drinking 2017 non-stop led to my drinking problem. I didn't have a drinking problem in law school or in college where I was able to drink and go to work and do this and do that. Now it's 2017. I cannot even get up to go to work. You know, that's a problem. So I think that anyone can become an alcoholic, but I'm not too hip on the word alcoholic, because I mean, if I am one, when I was one, okay, I can use the word, but I'm not anymore, so I don't call myself that.
Fair enough. I mean, I guess I use it for myself just because I like to remind myself, you know, and I don't feel, I definitely feel like the obsession has been lifted. It's not something that controls my life, but there are always, I co-host a podcast about alcoholism, so I mean, it's obviously on my mind, but it's just always interesting to me to hear other people talk about it. So 2018, you have this moment at work, and that's when you're like, hey, I'm done with this. This is, I mean, was it like a big epiphany, or was it like I just need to take a break, or?
I was really embarrassed because I've never drank at work before, so I was like kind of really embarrassed, and I actually just checked myself into rehab. That's how embarrassed I was. Like, I was just so embarrassed. I checked myself into a rehab, left the rehab feeling like I wasn't an alcoholic because everyone there was nuts, crazy, doing drugs, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I was being very judgmental, and I was like, you know what, these people are nuts. I'm okay.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I remember leaving rehab and going to get a drink, which clearly shows that I had a drinking problem. But I did like the 28 days in rehab, left, you know, okay, yes, I needed just a break. Now I'm good. But I went back into old habits. So it wasn't until, let's say, like July of 2019, yeah, like last July, I believe, that I was just like, yeah, I'm done. Like, I'm done. Something happened at home where like I was drinking. Long story short, I was so hot and I woke up like naked in my parents' bedroom, and like I freaked them the fuck out. Sorry, excuse my language. I don't know if I keep
That's
it like.
you're fine. Yes, you can curse.
I freak them out. And again, they don't understand what alcoholism is. They don't understand what I'm going through. They have never seen me. They're not around drunk people. They don't know anything. So they were just freaked out. And I just, looking at like the terror on my little sister's face, I was like, no, I have to stop. Like, this is just not working. So it was 2019 where I was like, July 2019, I was like, this is it. This has to be it.
And you talk about you spend some time in AA, or you use that as part of your program, and I think what I think is, and I don't want to promote it. It's what got me sober, and it's what keeps me sober in a lot of ways. But I think about what you said about, you know, there's good things in AA, but they're very much like you are an alcoholic. And so I think what's really valuable is, and what I've learned just from talking to other people, is how personal it is, and how everybody takes it differently. And so did you find that 2019 I guess what I want to ask is, was the program of AA, was that part of your recovery at that point, or?
Yeah, AA is still part of my recovery. I have a
Mm-hmm.
home group because I don't want to be around people who share similar issues as who share. Well, I don't want to say my home group we have similar experiences, but whatever. I want to be around other people who have suffered from alcoholism.
Right.
So I still go to my home group. Well, not now because of COVID-19, but I was going before 9 to 10. I just don't. I go there for the fellowship. I just don't really care for the steps, getting a sponsor.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't really care for that. And I think that like you mentioned, like our journeys, everyone's journey is just so different. You have to figure out what works for you. And that's why I tell people, like, you need to try different things. Go to this AA meeting. You might need the spiritual awakening. Maybe you need to see a therapist. Like, I've done anything and everything because and it's so crazy. Like, people always say like, oh, my turnaround time was kind of fast. Well, okay, college law school, I was drinking, probably drinking really in a not drinking heavily, but it was like looked at as normal. Okay, but I can admit I was drinking heavily, but I didn't have a problem then. 2017, 2018, I literally saw my life like change within like the snap of my fingers. Like literally lost my car, lost my apartment, lost this and that. And I was at that time I was really desperate just to get better. So I did try everything and anything. I went to rehab. I went to outpatient. I did AA. I did this and blah blah blah. And you just have to really figure out what works for you. Like for me, I still go to AA in the morning because I like to be around my home group. I like them. I have a therapist. I I rehost our support group meetings on Thursday. I'm reading The Naked Mind, which I love.
Yeah.
Like book. You have to do what works for you. And if being in part of AA is your thing, then go ahead. If that works for you, go ahead. But some folks, when you tell them like you don't do the steps AA, they get like all crazy on you. I'm like, can you relax? Like, relax, calm down. But no, I feel like I can't tell anyone what to do. Like it's a spiritual self journey, and when it comes to drinking, I can give you suggestions, but ultimately you're gonna have to figure out what works for you.
Yeah, it's funny it's exactly when you say that and you said, oh, well, I don't work the steps, and there's a little part inside of me is like, what do you mean? Like, but you got to, and I'm like, but that's my sobriety, and that's that's your sobriety and not my sobriety. And it reminds me of I went to a what's it called, refuge recovery meeting, and I came home and I was talking to my girlfriend, and I said, I don't know how these people stay sober. There's no structure there. And she's like, John, it's because it's not for you. You're the one who needs the structure, So I was like, and that was a big epiphany for me was, oh, that's because this is what I need to organize my life. That may not be what everybody else needs. They may not have it as bad as you, John. So, and you talk about having a therapist and you talk about, slipping into a depression. And I think what happens for some people is they think if I quit drinking, then all my problems go away.
Yeah.
And I found that in a lot of ways, when I quit drinking, it was just that now the problems that I had were exposed. Right. And so can you talk a little bit about like dealing with depression or other issues once you've gotten sober and going to therapy or whatever else you might do to do that?
Yeah, sure. So after I got sober, I think like maybe 2 months later, I was still like not feeling my best. I was still like, I understand that drinking caused a lot of my problems. So now, of course, I wasn't arguing with my friends. I wasn't fighting with my mom. I wasn't crashing cars. Great. Those problems have now went away now that I'm sober, but I was still really feeling unhappy. And through therapy and through basically therapy, I was diagnosed with OCD, and I didn't even know what OCD was. I just thought that OCD was just something. Honestly, I've only associated OCD with white people and cleaning too much. Like I don't know, like like I've never. I was like, what? I'm not a clean freak. Like what? And after learning and going through therapy, like OCD is more than just cleaning. It's having an obsessive compulsive demeanor, attitude, or actions. And he made I just kept on thinking back to my whole life, and it just made so much sense why I always needed to stay thin, would never leave the house without makeup. I would leave the house, and even though I know I locked the door, would come back 3 times just to make sure the door was locked, constantly checking to make sure my stove was off, obsessing over makeup, obsessing over the littlest, tiniest, out of place hair, going nuts. And it made so much sense of why, it made so much sense, and just brought everything together. And I don't think I would have figured that out if I was still drinking, because, when you're drinking, everyone is like, well, stop drinking. And then your doctor's like, stop drinking, and then things will get better. So if it was because of sobriety that I realized that I have other issues that have nothing to do with alcohol, like mental health issues.
Yeah, my sponsor told me too, and we were talking, and I was bringing up some stuff about my father, and he said, John, there may be some things that you need professional help with and that I cannot help you with. And I was like, oh, and it kind of made me laugh and chuckle because I thought that I was there to get fixed,
Mhm.
right? Like, oh, we're here to get fixed and the program's going to fix me and then I'll be fixed. And that was another epiphany of like, oh, okay. So
Yeah.
now that you've untangled this, there are other things to untangle. So I always think it's so important to think about that, is that it's again, we spend so much time drinking and being distracted and being trying to not think, because pain, right? We're in pain and we don't want to be in pain. And the easiest way to not be in pain is to drink.
Mhm.
Now, that doesn't last very long and the pain is still there. So I always just think it's valuable to talk about the other stuff, and whether it's depression or OCD or anxiety. I mean, my God, now in the way that the world is right now, I mean, who's not anxious
Okay.
or depressed or stressed about something, about anything, about everything? So, and so you've been sober a year now, 2 years?
Yeah. Oh no. I
No.
no.
Oh,
I'll make a year in, I want to say, October.
okay.
I don't have a year. I've been running to the Blacklist Club for about 2 years. And like I posted yesterday, the first year of me running that club, I was still drinking. I wanted to get sober, but I was still drinking. I've had a couple of relapses, but this is my longest stint yet. So I'll be a
Uh-huh.
year in October.
That's awesome. I mean, that's huge. Congratulations so far. And yeah. So can you talk about Sober Black Girls Club and why you started it while you were still drinking? You talk about not wanting to drink, and so what, just the evolution of that and
Yeah,
what
so
it is.
I got into like a fight with my friends, and I was like, you know what? Again, it was like a reoccurring epiphany of like I need to stop drinking. Alcohol just keeps on messing everything up for me. And I remember I went on Instagram and I was looking for like sober profiles to find, and at that time, like all I could find were like profiles of white women, and that wasn't the issue. Talking about like sobriety in a way where it was like this fun thing. Like here I am, my life is in shambles, but they're posting like quotes and talking about like different like alcohol-free wines and coffee and doing yoga. And here I am, miserable as fuck, like needing some type of like guidance and help, and I didn't see that, like I did not
Yeah.
see that at that time. So I just decided to create some Blacklist Club to for what to sorry, I'm like jumbling my words, to do two things. One, like add our presence in the sober community. Even today I saw like an ad of some guy posted an ad. It was like sober profiles, sober influencers of 2020, I don't know, something like that. And I was like, hello, like all these people, like white men, like where are the women? Where are like the black people get sober too? Like where is the diversity? And I read through the comments and people were like, wait, so black people don't get sober? It was just really weird. And I know like I guess he did DM me. That ad was from months ago. I don't know why it was showing up on my feed today. And he was like, he constantly is updating it. And I was like, yeah, I was like, because that's just not right. Like that's
Mm-hmm.
harmful. Um, so yeah, to basically to add our presence into the sober community, and as well as just add up different narratives. Like yeah, I have a lot of black women a part of Sober Black Girls Club who didn't really consider themselves alcoholics. They were able to have a family. Keep their jobs, no DWIs, no this and that. However, they realized that alcohol was keeping them from living their best life for whatever reason. So I just want to change the narrative. Yes, you can want to get sober because you might have an addiction. You might have a drinking problem. You might be abusing drugs, alcohol. And I want to also support the girls who just want to make sobriety the new norm, who want to change the way we interact with each other. So I'm just trying to like add different narratives and not let anyone feel left out, regardless if you went to rehab or if you did it on your own. Just trying to shape up the narrative of sobriety. Like, sobriety doesn't have to be because you're an alcoholic. Like, I can't wait. I'm not a scientist. I don't have a lot of information on that, but like, I honestly don't feel like anyone should be drinking. I just feel like when you think about what alcohol does and the potential it has to destroy your life, why is it even a thing? Why are people doing it?
Yeah, I mean, I've had numerous discussions, and people who haven't suffered from alcoholism in one way or another, they have two drinks and they feel nauseous and drowsy, and it's time to put it down. And I've never had that experience, never, So, and I think it's really important what you do, and you talk about being. It's really like it's a human thing, and the disease of alcoholism can affect anybody, and so when you go looking for help, and maybe you're stuck in quarantine, and maybe you're stuck in your apartment, and all you can think about is drinking, and you go onto Instagram, which is not always, there are some good things and there are some bad things with everything, but you're right, it's usually a bunch of white guys talking about exercise and
And
reading
diet.
the book. And so I just think it's really important. So when you start this Sober Black Girls Club, you're still drinking, and this is your way, and you talk about it in the bio about holding yourself accountable, and I think that that's a really important thing. And I know that I do that sometimes for fitness stuff online, where it's like, well, I promised myself I'm going to do 100 push-ups every single day for July, so I better put it out there, because if I don't, I won't do it. So can you talk a little bit about like that year of trying to hold yourself accountable while drinking and wanting to be sober?
Yeah, sure. So when Sober Black Girls Club first started, I was just a blog, and I just would write what was going on, post on Instagram. Like, it wasn't really a community as it is now. It was just
Mm-hmm.
a blog, basically. So yeah, I would tell myself I won't drink, and I don't know, like I might go like through 3 days, 5 days. I had like sometimes 2 weeks of no alcohol, feeling really good, but something would always happen where I would always still go back, and just constantly relapsing, not putting in the work. And I say this, sobriety does, if you have a problem, well, sobriety takes work. Self-esteem takes work. Figuring out who you are takes work. So I don't like to say sobriety takes work, because I don't want to make it seem like it's a hard thing. But getting to know who you truly are takes work. And I wasn't doing that. I wasn't figuring out like what my triggers were. Why when I kind of didn't need to drink was I still thinking about a drink? Just trying to figure out like different specific things about who I was, and what my problem, what my problem was, and where did it stem from, and even going deeper past the bottle. So at that time, 2018, I was just a girl typing, didn't know anything, didn't know what I was doing, just didn't know anything, to be honest. But I knew I wanted to be sober. I knew that much.
Yeah. Um, it's great. And I think it's really helpful. And I think that it definitely brings a different voice to this bigger conversation that all of us are having about staying sober and figuring out how to get sober, and looking for people. It's important to find people that look like you. It's important to find somebody who you can, because that's the thing, that the thread that I found in recovery is that it's relatable. It has to be relatable. If I
Exactly.
don't relate, if I don't relate to you, then I'm not going to be interested in what you say on some level. And so that's really important. Another thing uh, that's great right now. Can you talk about your Dry July initiative or
Yes.
campaign?
Yeah. So what you just before I get into that, like what you
Yeah.
just brought up was like a really good point. I just want like I didn't even know I had a problem, because at that time I was still like looking presentable. I feel like representation is so important, because I know for me, I thought alcoholics were bums in the streets. And now I know anyone can be an alcoholic, a lawyer, doctor, anyone. Like, you can have your house, your car, and still be an alcoholic. So I think that it is, and at first in the beginning, I wasn't putting my face a lot on my blog. I wasn't really showing who I was, but I realize that the more I get personal, the more I put my picture out, the more I DMs and emails I get from girls who look like me, who are like, okay, I think I might have a problem too. I need people to see that this is the face of a person who can possibly be an alcoholic, who can abuse drugs, can be an abuse alcohol, excuse me. So I think representation is so important because it shows, it looks different for certain people. And sometimes you might not even, people don't even know they have a problem because, you know, their life is together. But if we can show, like, listen, you can still have a problem, you can still have a problem with alcohol and have A, B, and C, I think, like, and that's, again, it goes back to changing up the narrative. It's so important for different narratives to be told when talking about sobriety and addiction. But going back to, going to your initial question about July, our campaign. Well, one, I feel like everyone has been drinking. Drinking a lot this past couple of months. So the Black Girls Club has really grown, and we haven't grown because like I'm doing anything special. We've grown because I feel like people are realizing that like they probably have a problem, like, you know, and the truth is the longer you do something, the harder it's going to be to stop. So I work with a lot of experienced women who are always looking for a break. Oh, I don't know how I'm going to start this. And I just felt like a challenge is the easiest way to start something. Like, just do this challenge and get 31 days of sobriety and see how it feels. So that's why we decided to actually participate in Dry July. We've also done one. We did like a no alcohol challenge in January and also last October. So they work. Like, the women that I work with, that I'm friends with, they love the challenge. This challenge is going to, it is dedicated to Breonna Taylor. And I mean, I think everyone is pretty much familiar with her case, but long story short, in March 13, I believe, she was killed in her home. The police, 8 shots. The police stormed her apartment stormed the wrong apartment. They weren't looking for her apartment. They weren't even looking for her. They were looking for somebody else who was already in custody, and ended up shooting her 8 times, and she died. And I just think that's like so ludicrous, and it just doesn't make any sense. The fact that you apply for a warrant with false information, with false things that were not true. They weren't facts, but you applied for the warrant. You lied to this judge, got the warrant signed, and it was a no-knock warrant. So basically, they had permission due to the warrant to just storm into her apartment at night at 1 o'clock in the morning. And her story really hurts me the most because, okay, we constantly seeing Black Lives Matter, people getting killed by the police, you know, for maybe selling loose leaves or whatever you call loose cigarettes or drinking outside. She was in her home. Where can we be safe? And not even in our own home at night and sleeping in bed. I think that is ridiculous, like absolutely ridiculous. And I don't care what the cops say. I don't care what their reasoning is. I don't even care. Her life is gone for nothing. She did nothing wrong. And I just, when I talk about her, when I hear her story, I just think it could have been me. It could have been me. So basically, back to challenge. Every day that we're staying dry, we're completing an actionable item. So either calling the mayor of Kentucky, of Louisville, whatever city. I'm really bad with pronunciation sometimes. I have like this New York slur. So whatever city that is in Kentucky, we're like making phone calls. We're donating to her family, etc. Every day we do something. Today is Blackout Tuesday, so we're just not buying anything. Yeah.
Well, that's cool. And then another thing you said also actionable items or actionable actions. And one of them you talked about is maybe even taking the money you would have spent on drinking and donating that toward something that, you know, whatever the cause might be. And I think that that's really great because one of the things I learned in very early sobriety is when I quit drinking, I don't know that this is true, but it felt like my bank account tripled Like it felt like the amount of money I had grown exponentially in those first few months. And I was thinking, is this really how much I spent on alcohol like every single day? And when I started to trace it back, and I would say, well, even if I bought a cheap bottle here, and then there was the 6-pack, and then there was the bottle of wine in case I went through the bottle, and I realized, how many hundreds of dollars I was spending every single week, and how, those resources can be used for anything better, you know?
No,
So
that is
I just think it's
sorry.
I was just gonna say, I think it's a great thing. And I mean, not only to stay sober, but to also, do something, for Breonna Taylor and for a cause that like is bigger than yourself in some ways, to use that vernacular.
When you talk about money, my gosh, because for me it wasn't just drinking. It was like drinking and eating went hand in hand for me. So like I'm
Hmm.
not gonna drink like Hennessy and make a sandwich. No, I'm probably gonna get like a seafood boil and do this and do that. Like like make it seem as if I'm not just drinking. Like I'm
Hmm.
eating, I'm going out, blah blah blah. When the first month, I actually had a savings. Like I couldn't believe it because the truth is, I spent hundreds a week on alcohol. And again, I wouldn't be eating this much food if I wasn't hungover, if I wasn't drinking this much. So it really went hand in hand, my drinking and eating, and correlating to like the money that I spent on alcohol and food was crazy. Like literally, me easily spending like $300, $500 a week just to satisfy my my drinking habit.
Hmm. And it's all the behaviors around the drinking, which include, getting takeout food, going out to dinners, and
Yeah.
just, and I found that when I was drinking, the food that I was eating was not great. It was
Mhm.
usually trash, just because I wanted to feel good in that moment of being hungover. So I mean, it's a great thing. And I've talked about this with my co-host on the podcast about the sober challenges and stuff like that. And, we've gone back and forth about, at first I felt very, a little resentful, like, oh, I'm in this shit for real. And you're just having a fun little month off. Right. And
Yeah.
and that was my feeling, like sober October or dry January and all these things. And I've now come to the realization that anything that can help anybody just remove alcohol from their life for a little while even is a good thing.
Mhm.
So that my thinking has changed on that, because it used to be this like, well, you guys don't know. What do you normies think this is all fun and games for 30 days? I got to do this every single day for the rest of my life. And I was like, well, that's not a very healthy attitude, John. So, like, and not everybody has the biggest problem like you do. So it's like, that's those things I say to myself. So I just think it's really good to not only find something that can help people get away from alcohol, but also that can be for a bigger cause. Um, and so Sober Black Girls Club has been around for like 2 years now, right? Something like that. 2 years. And what else? Is there anything else about it, or how would people find you, or is there anything else you want to talk about with regards to that?
Yeah, thanks, Sean. So we have a website. People think that we're an Instagram account, which I understand why, but like we have like a website, like where like we release like weekly blogs and newsletters. We have like a merchandise shop. I guess Instagram is our biggest platform. That's where a lot of people meet us and hear us and talk to us. We run a support group on Thursdays, and that's just for Black and Brown women just to get together. Again, in this group, the women are in multiple different programs. Some can be doing AA, some outpatient. We come together just to talk about our issues and just to give each other advice and encourage. During COVID-19, um, well, we're still in COVID-19. I don't know why I said during. So, and earlier, in the earlier times, before, like, I want to say March, April, it was really hard for some of our, I want to say members, girls, because they weren't working. They were either in rehab or outpatient, just trying to get their life together. You know, like I can, you know, I have a law degree. A lot of people don't have that. So for me, when I was basically, you know, in and out of rehab and outpatient, it was still easy for me to find work per diem. I didn't need to work for a law firm. I can, you know, money has never really been an issue for me because I could just work on myself on my own. But a lot of these women were like trying to figure out their lives. So they weren't really working. If they're working, they were on part-time. They were going to outpatients, in and out of like rehab, trying to get like their lives together. You know, they haven't filed taxes in years, which is like the reality for a lot of people who suffer from addiction. And it was difficult. So we started like the COVID-19 fund, food fund. And basically we've been, right now we have a rotation of 12, 13 women who like every month until this thing gets better, we send them food, groceries through Amazon Fresh. I'm really happy about that. And I'm actually really surprised, like the way this, I mean, I don't even want to talk about politics, but I just feel like our country is weird. Like you gave us $1,200 for 3 weeks, I mean, for 4 months, like we're March, April, May, June, July, 5 months. Like, and you think people are like, what are people supposed to do with that? Like, what? Like, I have women who like I've seen their fridge, like who literally, if we did not get them groceries up each month, would not have food to eat. This country is just so weird, and I just feel like a lot of folks who are suffering from addiction, they're not getting the support they need. It's just like, come on, it's just weird. So aside from that, we've also started our medical fund, and that was inspired. So I was having a conversation with one of the girls who I do talk to a lot through the Black Girls Club, and she was interested in going into inpatient. So we were researching inpatient treatments for a while. She finally found one that she liked. She's very particular. She doesn't trust people. So it took us a while to like find a place that she liked. And she actually called. We spoke to a financial person, and then they were telling her out-of-pocket expenses were going to be $3,000, and that automatically like discouraged her. And at first I was like, well, we can find a free one. But then I just like, why don't you deserve to be in a rehab where you can go outside for like an hour, or you can go swimming? Like, I didn't have that experience. I had one where I went to a state ran rehab where, again, I left feeling like I wasn't an alcoholic. So, you know, we have to like, I don't know, like basically us creating that fund is just acknowledging that it doesn't matter like what your color is. It doesn't matter your level of education or your income bracket. Everyone deserves good shit. Like, I don't care. Like, you deserve good stuff. So that's why we decided to come together. And now she's going to go off to California, which, you know, I'm kind of jealous. If I could go to California right now just to even stay in a rehab, get out of New York City, I will do that in a second. So she's going to California now. She's starting her rehab in a couple of weeks. So that one is really important because we're trying to give our girls, a good recovery story, whatever. Great services. We want them to really choose sobriety, and in a way where they don't feel like they're losing something, in a way where they feel like they're actually gaining something. So yeah, we have those two funds, our support group. You know, you can Google us at the Black Girls Club. We're on Twitter, we're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, our website. We're just everywhere. Just cool. If you just Google, you'll find it.
Okay. And then I have two questions. One, what are you struggling with right now? Like in your sobriety, what is something that you are currently struggling with, or that gives you trouble?
That's a good question. Routine. I'm just so bad with routine. And I shouldn't say I'm bad because I'm not making it work. I'm being lazy. And I understand like we're in quarantine, but it's been five months. So the first 3 months, I was like, Katie, just be gentle with yourself. But now it's like, okay, we have to like start adapting to this new reality. And I don't feel like I'm doing a great job at that. I'm just all over the place in my bed. Like, whatever pops up in my head, instead of like following my routine, like
Yeah.
block this routine. So definitely I struggle with routine.
Yeah, I think a lot of us are right now. And then do you have any advice for anybody who is looking to get sober, what they might do, or if they're struggling with alcoholism? I mean, what would you say to somebody who said, "Hey, I want to quit drinking"?
Um, I would say reach out to someone. I think that support is just so important. I just feel like sometimes we underestimate how important support is. But I feel like if you feel like you need help in terms of alcohol or any substance, I think reaching out and getting the help, whether that be AA or a rehab or like a counselor or a number that you found online, just making that initial effort to say, hey, I have a problem and I need help. I think that that's just so important. You can you might not get sober right away. You might. Some people do, some people don't. But the fact that you're making this effort, like sometimes I'll post something and, I'll see a comment, or I go through this a lot of like women who I know they want help and I know they want to stop drinking, but sometimes they're just not really like all the way there. Like, you commented on my profile, so now I'm DMing you and you're giving me one word answers. Like, so it's like just admitting that like you need help and that's okay. I think that's so important, and letting people help you. One thing that I always say, I need to follow my own advice. Everything that I've been through in life, someone has already been through it. Me, the thing is that I probably just didn't listen. Probably thought it could never happen to me. Probably thought that I'm too good for it to happen. Anything that anyone is going through, there's always gonna be a solution. So like the hard work, and I don't think the hard work is already done for you, but the fact that like, imagine before AA, imagine before Zoom, like, you know what I mean? Like there's solutions. You just have to find it and find which one works for you. But like, thank God we don't have to come up with our own stuff. Like, I don't need to make an AA, like, or like the Naked Mind. It's already there. Like,
Yeah.
information is there already. So just, stay hopeful, stay faithful. Sobriety takes time. However, once you've reached sobriety, regardless if it's a day or 2 days, or that's another thing. Sometimes like I'll like talk to women and they're like, well, I'm not really sober. I have only had like 3 days of like clean time. I'm like, so that means you are sober. Like what you don't need to have a year for me to consider you a sober woman. I think that once you make that decision that you no longer want to drink, I feel like, and you attempt and you try, you will always be sober to me. Even like if you're still drinking, the fact that and you're trying to get help and you're working to put the bottle down, I commend you. So yeah, just stay hopeful, stay faithful, and just and things around us, and also in yourself. I think that's so important. Just really understanding that there's no one like you. There's no one's gonna live to tell your story. Only you are. And you're writing it, and getting sober is a part of your story, your journey. So keep on going at it.
That's great. Thank you so much. And is it your birthday today?
It is. I'm so honestly, John, it's so hot. One, I don't have anyone to celebrate with. So I'm just not even. I'm
okay.
Not celebrating my birthday today.
Okay.
I'm gonna celebrate my birthday maybe in like 2 months. I don't know, but I know I'm having another birthday. This just ain't it. I couldn't even wake up to put makeup on because like it's so hot. My cake melted. Like what? This is like this is so yeah. It is my birthday technically July 7th, but I think I will be celebrating it in October. So
okay, that sounds good. Well, thank you so much, and I appreciate your words and your wisdom and sharing your time. And thank you again.
Thanks, John, for having me. I'll see you on Instagram.
Yes. All right. Have a good day.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks again for listening. Our music, as always, is by Neglect. You can find more of his stuff at neglect.bandcamp.com.
And you can find us on all social media platforms that matter: Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And you can reach us at aisforalcoholic@gmail.com.
Talk to you later.
Yeah.